Alright, so in this video I wanted to give you guys a breakdown on how I made this robot model. So diving right into it, I guess the first thing that I could talk about is how I made the cyclorama effect. So this could be achieved by extruding one edge of a plane and then beveling that edge to give the plane a curved look. So going into the design of the robot, I chose to use two spheres, one for the body and one for the head. The sphere used for the body is slightly deformed by stretching it along the z-axis. The eye itself is made up of 7 different pieces. The outermost layer is a cylinder with multiple extrusions, giving it a more mechanical look. Inside, there are 2 more cylinder shapes. One remains simple, while the innermost features both extrusions and intrusions. For that inner cylinder, I inserted the face, intruded it, inserted again, extruded it, and finally inserted once more. I then separated the final face to edit it separately from the rest of the shape. Between the 2 cylinders, I placed 2 rings by scaling down a torus. Lastly, I added 2 cross-cylinder shapes to enhance the overall aesthetics. So the idea to give the robot headphones was actually my wife's suggestion. The shape is made up of several face inserts, extrusions, intrusions, and bevels. For the headband, I used the spin function. I basically extruded a part of the headset speakers where I wanted the band to begin, then separated the shape from the speakers so I could edit it independently. For the speakers themselves, I applied a scratched metal material that I downloaded from fab.com. I didn't use any external materials for the rest of the robot, just simple base colors. The neck is yet another cylinder shape that uses the same extrusion and intrusion techniques. The same goes for the wheel socket. It's made up of several cylinder shapes in different forms. The wheel itself is a torus, slightly scaled to adjust the width. To create the tire thread, I used a mix of intrusions and bevels and slightly rotated the edges along the x-axis to get that thread pattern. There are definitely more advanced ways to model tires, but this method felt like the simplest and the most effective. There are also plenty of YouTube videos that walk through similar approaches. I wanted to jump back into the eye and explain how I created the glowing halo effect. It's actually a very simple 2-step process. In the Compositor, I added a glare node and set the glow type to fog glow. Then under shading, I increased the emission strength and adjusted the color to get the desired glow. That's really all it takes to achieve a soft cinematic halo effect. Before diving into the render and grading the final image, I wanted to go over the rigging process I used for the animation, which was pretty simple. I parented all the head elements, the head sphere, and the body parts, excluding the tires, to the main body sphere, and then parented the entire model to the empty object for easier control. To make the tires rotate automatically as the robot moves, I added a driver to their x-axis rotation. I set the expression to var *-3, chose the empty as the controlling object, and set the driver type to Y location. This setup basically tells Blender to rotate their tires forward on the y-axis, creating a realistic rolling effect that syncs perfectly with the robot's movement. I rendered both the still image and the animation using cycles with GPU complete enabled. The image was rendered at 4K resolution while the animation was done in 1080p. I used a focal length of 50mm for a natural cinematic perspective. For quality, I set the max samples to 3000 for the still image to capture as much detail as possible, and 600 samples for the animation to keep the render times manageable. Denoising was enabled on both to help clean up any remaining noise and to reduce the need for excessive sampling. Lastly, I jumped into Photoshop for the final edit on the still image. I slightly decreased the highlights, lifted the shadows and whites, brought down the blacks to give the image that cinematic feel. I also reduced the clarity to soften the overall image and added a subtle vignette to draw more focus towards the center. Well, that wraps up this video. If you enjoyed it or found anything helpful, make sure to subscribe. There's a lot more coming soon. I've got more builds, breakdowns, behind the scenes stuff in the works, so stick around and thanks for watching.